about active transportation. As always, today's presentation is recorded, and we are recording now and also sharing this live on our Facebook page. We always record these, and you can find the past conversations at our website at pcecmt.org/community conversations. There's also a tab in the menu there. We are so thrilled today to have Dan Burden joining us. Before we get started with his presentation, I'm going to do a quick introduction about PCEC and our work, and then I'll introduce Dan and pass it over to him. Sounds like he's got about 25-30 minutes, and then we hope to have a solid 20 minutes for Q&A, which Sarah Stans will lead for us. So please hold your questions to the end. Feel free to drop them in the chat as always if they come to you as we're going. My name is Michelle Ubaraga, and I serve as the Executive Director for Park County Environmental Council. We are your community conservation group. We work with people here in Park County to safeguard the land, water, wildlife, and communities. Here in Yellowstone's Northern Gateway, we do that through grassroots organizing and advocacy. Park County is the traditional homeland of the Apsaloka, or the Crow tribe, and their ancestors. For the Crow and other indigenous people across the region, like Northern Yellowstone's Tukadeka, this area continues to be culturally significant. Park County today has a long tradition of human habitation, of people who have loved, cherished, and stewarded this place. And we are committed to working together to honor this legacy and this place for future generations. So we've been hosting these Zoom conversations about growth and planning in our community for the past several years. We've moved online. Our goal is to host conversations that help us all learn and gain a shared understanding of some of the most pressing conservation issues we face as a community, so that we can all be more knowledgeable and prepared to advocate for this place together. And there's a lot happening right now around growth and change. We've been seeing more and more people retreating to gateway communities like ours to live near natural amenities, public lands, the Yellowstone River, Yellowstone National Park. And this trend has been happening for years, but with the COVID pandemic, the increase in new residents in Southwest Montana and Livingston is really quite remarkable. But we see this as an opportunity to work together and as a community create the vision for how we want to grow, rather than letting that growth happen to us. And in that effort, the city of Livingston has been really proactive, and they're kicking off the Trails and Active Transportation Planning process. PCEC's Sarah Stans, who's joining us on the call today, sits on the steering committee that has been appointed to the city. And so our conversation today is really gearing us up for what we hope will be fun public participation in reimagining our trails and streets. We hope that our conversation with Dan will serve to inspire and inform us and give us the tools that we need to be effective in shaping these plans. In addition to the active transportation plan, there will be an update to the Livingston downtown plan coming soon. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker today, Dan Burden. Dan was named by Time Magazine as one of the 6 most important civic innovators of all time, and he's served as a White House champion of change. He now serves as the Director of Inspiration and Innovation for Blue Zones, an organization that helps communities change in ways that promote overall health and longevity. Dan wanted me to also be sure to share that he has lived in and loved Montana. He's a University of Montana grad, and he spent 10 years in Missoula. He now resides in Port Townsend, Washington, and so we are thrilled to have him here today via Zoom. Take it away, Dan.
Thank you, and what a great honor this is. I'm going to first see if my session works. We're all dealing with new technologies, right? Do we see a deck that includes the Blue Zones logo? Correct?
Yep, you're great.
Okay, good. It's working then. Okay, so I decided that for this presentation, I wanted to focus on downtowns, on small town downtowns, that this is really where the most essential change for a whole nation is going to occur. Small towns, I have the ability to change faster than a medium-sized towns or even big towns. So one of the principles of Blue Zones, which you can check us out on the internet, bluezones.com, is really to bring back health and to focus on towns that are ready for that. And again, most of our towns that we work in are small. And so we always start with downtown. That's our concept, our principle. And in today's presentation, I want to focus on the built environment, how we can enhance walkability and find the best ways to bring back the strength of downtowns. I tend not to read the images I've created, but this is also available in a PDF version for those who want to spend more time.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
I wanted to, your video is off. I don't know if you forgot or if you were intending to turn it back on, but we could still see the presentation. We just can't see you.
Oh, oh, shucks. Well, let's do the
you.
presentation. And then when I turn this off, hopefully I'll show up, right?
That sounds great.
Okay. Oh yeah, it does say I could start the video, whatever. So with that, I want to lay out the whole concept of my presentation, start with the principles, and then go to the economics of downtowns and towns, and then talk about the solutions that are available to downtowns. And because it's so important, I want to talk about the intersections in downtowns, and then give you some closing success stories, how these can advance. So with that, every presentation I ever do, I focus on what is it the town or region values? What do they care about the most? And to focus on that's what brings people together, that creates the collaboration that otherwise wouldn't occur. About 95% of what people believe in, they'll work toward. It's the other 5% that they have to spend some time and energy and to understand what we've built too often doesn't celebrate what we really value in our own community. And I like to start with answering an important question. Why do we have downtowns? Why do we have cities? And it's a really simple answer, but until we understand why we have cities, then we won't be able to truly get it. Come on, why is this not advancing? Let's try it that way. Okay, yeah, so going back historically, cities were invented to maximize our exchange, not just our goods, services, and products, but our culture, our friendship, our knowledge. And in the end, to minimize our travel, not to keep extending it out and maximizing it. So everything that you're planning to do should be focused on that, and everything else is going to make sense. And indeed, so fun that big corporations have decided to get that message across and tell you they're going to deliver to you some kind of a personal interaction. That's not where it occurs. It occurs on the street, in the built environment that we craft, that we create. Hold on a second. There we go. So now, if those are the things we want to honor, what are the core principles that we need to get across? First of all, stop building our cities for cars. Accommodate the car, but build the cities for people in place. And it's so simple to understand that every decision we make should be focused on, is this going to help create a better environment for people, place, retail, or not? And so let's go back in time a little bit, which sadly almost all town codes are still built for, is to maximize the car-centric side of things, even when it comes to where we place the buildings on a site. And so I love this contrast between what on the right we call traditional, and that's the correct way to build for people and place, versus on the left, which is going to further induce more driving and reduce walking and bicycling. There are a couple of core elements. Some of these are just being introduced to our language right now. Something we refer to as the 15-minute city. Essentially start at the core, the heart, the downtown of any community, and then build everything to achieve success within a 5-minute walk. It's a quarter of a mile. And go out to a 10-minute walk. And then eventually go out to the 15-minute walk. But all of our code should induce this level of quality of building. I like to apply what is my litmus test, that any change that comes before a city council or a county commission should be focused on this litmus. Is it going to reward what we value the most? And if it's health, if it's conserving our precious resources, whatever it is, it's the short trip and active transportation that drive that engine. So use that as your litmus test. And then what would it look like? And so this is an actual built example. This is not a photomorph of a street in Miami that you see all the ugly asphalt and heat gain. Think of Miami and the heat that would induce. That same street from virtually the same angle is now what you see on the right. And it's now focused on people and place, not speed and maximizing the convenience of the car. And that is so important to get across. I can do that same kind of a treatment in a small town. Think of Chincoteague. It's on the eastern shore of Virginia. It's a town we worked in. When we got there, we saw what's on the upper right. But the important element is people will drive hours to get to Chincoteague, but then they won't stay. And they'll spend more hours just getting back home or going on to a town that has some quality. But what if they transform that street, that downtown in this case, to what you see in the lower right? And truly, Walt Disney has determined that if you just keep a family in place for an added day, that's $2,000 spent in that town or city. So let's get into the economics. That's a good lead in, I think. And I'm going to show the difference over 10 years between Portland, Oregon, on the left. That's a built new part of Portland. And then Atlanta. In the same 10 years, they were able to reduce the property taxes in Portland and increase the quality of neighborhoods and reduce their air pollution. These are actual outcomes, measurable. At the same time, Atlanta was forced to increase their property taxes, and their air pollution worsened and their neighborhood quality plummeted. If we want to measure true outcomes, one of my best associates that I work with that I love, Joe Minikazi in Urban 3, has both training as an architect and as an economist. He has measured the differences between, say, a strip style big box store kind of a place on what they return to a community, and this is absolutely across the nation, and a downtown. 800% increase if we incentivize growth in a downtown versus a strip or big box solution. Now let's look at the tools. There are many, and indeed it would take a full day course to really get into these in enough depth that we could get these across to the entire community. But probably number one is to focus on speed. The higher the speed, the more damage you do to retail and the social life of the street. But I'm giving you a list of some other items. By the way, that's a scene of the town where I live, Port Townsend. We have one of the most successful Main Street markets in, I think, the whole country per capita. So let's now look at some of the specifics for Park County. I don't know all the communities in the county, but I understand Bozeman pretty well and Livingston as well from work we've done in the past. And I'm going to focus on introducing the term target speed and getting a real concentration on that element. Talk about the importance of curb extensions on main streets and near main streets. Parking, absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit about the details and some of the other things that we can do. And so let me go right into the portion that explains target speed. So this is the end result we look for, but too many cities and states are trying to just respond to whatever the 85th percentile of drivers do. That's just totally wrong. What we should do is design for the place that we'd like to become. So general question for everyone, think this through in your own minds. How fast do you think the average driver would go down this street? It's a real place. It's not an overly large town, it's Chico. And once you have that idea in mind, what if you add this? What if you add this? What if you add green and vertical elements? And then what if you terminate the vista? This is all that the engineers get to do, is to work on these details. But then the architects, developers come in and help build it out. Think of Park Avenue over time. More of the space becomes like this. Some of it is in this general realm, but not all of it. You don't have parking, for example, in places that you really should look at them. As I mentioned at the start, I want to focus on intersections. And this is a pretty good example of an intersection that got rebuilt. It happens to be in Providence. And see if I can get it to move forward. This is really what it looks like. This is a compact intersection in a significant sized city. But look at all the steps they took. They really made this a place where as you look down whatever street you're in, you realize you can't go fast when you go through this intersection. This is referred to as a neighborhood or a mini roundabout, but it is truly allowing every direction of travel for any size vehicle, but it's all very careful geometry that gets applied. Now let's go to the importance of a gateway into a community. And Park Street into Livingston is a great example of a place that is sending the wrong message, kind of the Brattleboro on top message. But think about if instead the message that as you pull off of the highway, you're rewarded by coming into a place, right? Now you want to go downtown. Now you want to slow down and you want to look for a place to park once, get out and do all your shopping from there. So I find intersections a very important tool in everything we do, any size, any scale, any neighborhood, to take the scene on the top, which is a US highways, US 99 through Gridley, California. But we took that challenge and we showed what it would look like if you added the geometry of a roundabout. And then after the developers are able to come in and maximize their ability to enliven the street, what it finally feels like. But I also want to talk about intersections on a smaller scale. On the left is Winter Park, and that happens to be a one-way street. I'm not a proponent of one-way streets, but there are places where they do work. And so notice how they've narrowed down using curb extensions, the opening, and now the motors slow down and the pedestrians can easily get across the street, and we have a sense of place. On the right is Davis, California. Very well reconstructed intersection, again, focused on people and place, denying speed, right? Another town that we've worked in recently is Avon in Colorado. The scene in the upper left had been 5 lanes. You can probably see the old markings. They didn't repave. And so they narrowed it down to 2 lanes, added in the bike lanes and the parking. But then they asked us, what could we do to make it even a better place and start to invite the buildings to come? And so we gave them two options, one with the roundabout, which terminates the vista and does a beautiful job. And then we said, oh, as an alternative, you could still keep an intersection, but make it more compact. Notice again, we work with parking. Parking is absolutely essential to a downtown. One parking space can bring in $250,000 per year. That's one parking space, but it's got to be part of a bigger master plan. So a little more on curb extensions, sometimes referred to as bulb outs or bump outs. And you again can see the basic geometrics that are involved, as you see here. Just to show the comparison, without a bump out or curb extension, you can see how wide the street is, how exposed the pedestrian is, and how the motorist gets one message versus on the other side of the street. This is an actual built example. Very easy to get across the street, very easy to be seen and to see other people. Curb extensions are more, again, bump outs, depend on the phrase that people prefer, is a very low cost treatment. It's a place to green up the street, to create that identity, to create that narrowing, and not even interrupt drainage if you choose that kind of an option. We also really want to focus on not building your lanes any wider than they need to be. 10 is enough for most streets. Sometimes you want an added foot, but notice that even transit can work well with the right combinations in 10-foot lanes. We also want to make sure that we create the right identity for crossings, help people get across the street. And I'm going to close out with a few success stories. These are all streets and towns I've helped transform, but I'm very proud of them. Hamburg, New York, which is in Western New York, needed to rebuild all three of its principal streets through town. And after seriously discussing what the previous consultant had done, we came in and said, look, you want to slow the speeds, but keep it moving. And what we were able to do as a result of the scenes you see is truly to support the mega truck traffic they had through town, but not give it more space than it needed. Those are essentially 9-foot lanes on a state highway. And we are so successful that it increased the building permits from 9 per year for the town, clear up to 99 per year. South Beach is another one of my favorite places. I forgot to drop in the before scenes, but I think you can see how proud we are of South Beach and Miami, and now becoming a place that was a very scary place before this scene. And closing out on the solutions with Lancaster. It's in California. Notice their street before had been 5 lanes, and going through the inspiration to become a place for people in place, we knocked it down to 1 lane in each direction, brought the speeds from 35 down to about 12 miles per hour. People now come to invest in downtown, to spend time in downtown, and it's created the whole identity for all of Lancaster. And I'm going to close out with this very important message, that as you go forward with, in time, creating a downtown master plan, with your growth policy plan, and with your active transportation plan, bringing everyone on board a process we call informed consent will help overcome the NIMBYism and the other sad forces that are anti-community in concept. And this is a true story. In Michigan, Sault Ste. Marie was offered the opportunity to have sidewalks on the left-hand side of the street. It was an omission, and over 300 people came together for a meeting, all to kill the concept of a sidewalk on their side of the street. They can't get across the street. And it's so sad, without being informed, they made the wrong decision. And this is where we are. We need to go through a process where people come to understand and appreciate what their opportunities are for any change in their community. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back to you guys.
Thank you, Dan. That was wonderful. I'm going to pass to Sarah to open it up to questions.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Michelle. Sarah Stans, and I do, for those of you who came late, I'm the Active Transportation Coordinator with PCEC. And just as a little reminder with Livingston, we have so much opportunity in our assets. We have traditional wide streets, ample opportunity for street reconfiguration and all the examples that Dan showed us. We have some suburbs with cul-de-sacs, and if you've walked around those areas, they aren't an asset, and you can find quickly how hard it is to move around and how it is to get to central social centers and day-to-day errands and activities on the north side. And I think we're also in an amazing opportunity. We have a growth policy that's underway, lots of changes with regards to transportation. Non-motorized transportation has been implemented, the active transportation plan and trails plan, and then a downtown master plan will be the next step in our planning of the city. So I would love to open it up for some community conversation. We have, I want to say about 25 minutes to do so, and then we can close just before the hour and get everybody back to work and what you're doing. If you have questions, you can just pop on. We have a small enough group. Send a question in the chat. I do have one on queue, or any way you want. So Jesse, do you want to ask your question directly? I think it's great to see your face. Otherwise, I'm happy to do it.
No, I'm happy to. Sorry, I was eating my lunch, so that's why. Anyway. I'm obviously not a good typer either because I can't spell in my comment. But my question was, with the Downtown Master Plan and the Active Transportation Coalition Strategic Plan, how do those work as far as similarities with the growth plan? So we're working through the growth plan will get approval from the city commission, and then it acts as sort of this guiding document. Is that the same as the Downtown Master Plan and this ATC strategic plan? Will it have to be approved by the commission? And then will those documents act as guiding plans as well?
Might be able to, yeah, I'll take that question. So all good questions, Jesse, and questions about process. And here in Montana, we have growth policies, and then under growth policies, we have neighborhood plans. So the plan is to do a new downtown plan. This is Livingston's almost 20-year-old downtown plan. When this was done in 2002, there was a great deal of public input, and it actually is a fairly good plan. The problem is it's outdated. You know, it's almost 20 years old. So we're looking forward to starting that process to update it. And back to your question, Jesse, that will be a neighborhood plan that falls under the Livingston growth policy. And that plan would need to go through the planning board, hopefully not to the same excruciating detail that you guys are currently going through in your growth policy update. And then ultimately approved as a neighborhood plan by the city commission. So we're waiting for the growth policy process to finish. We're looking at the final couple of weeks there. Maybe we'll have a new downtown or new growth policy by May. And we'll look forward to starting that downtown plan, and we'll keep people posted on that process. Great question, Jesse.
Jim Berg, do you want to ask your question? And then Patricia, sorry, I missed you. I'll come back to Patricia and then Marshall.
Hi, thanks, Sarah. I have a question for Dan. I understand you have some knowledge of Livingston.
I do.
I'm chair of the zoning commission, so I'm, struggling a lot with how to deal with parking and traffic. I think there's a pretty strong consensus in town that we have a traffic problem, and we also have a recognition that we need to increase the population density in the downtown area as opposed to continual sprawl out on the periphery. But there is a real problem in our town with available parking downtown. There's already a fair number of conflicts going on between people that live downtown, people that want to shop downtown, store owners, that kind of thing. And so if we want to really increase housing density downtown, what kind of strategies would work for providing the necessary parking areas to do that?
Sure. So really important to go with those towns that have increased the density, the number of people who live in a downtown, shop in a downtown, and so on. Cambridge, Massachusetts quadrupled their density, the number of people living in the city, and they reduced their traffic. And therefore, they reduced their demand for parking. That's an example on the West Coast, Vancouver, British Columbia. Similar result, 5 times increase in density and walkability, livability aspects. And again, decreased need for moving cars and parking cars. The more walkable a community becomes, the more walkable, livable, the fewer people need to own that second car or even a car altogether. The whole time I lived in Missoula, we didn't own a car, didn't need one because of where we lived, and chose the lifestyle where we didn't have to. Your parking issues are very important, but don't go overboard. Let the market demand how much parking actually gets created. But as I studied your streets in Livingston, I found all kinds of additional places you could put parking by narrowing the width of the lanes and being able to insert more parking. So you have many choices because you're so overbuilt for the car, for speed and convenience. And so I think you're going to find you're going to have ample solutions when you do the downtown master plan and get into a street by street concept of what would help slow traffic, but create more parking at the same time. Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Jim? Do you have any follow-up? You want to take?
Well, that's reassuring to hear that. And you certainly have a lot more experience with those specific solutions than I do. So that's, I guess, what we need to do is kind of dig into the practicalities of
Yep.
do that.
Yep. Most towns I work in now are just removing the parking requirements in the downtown and letting the market prevail. But it's so sad that many towns set the same parking requirements as they did for the suburbs. And even that formula was wrong. So trying to get more parking into a downtown by a code or requirement is not the right way to grow a downtown. Focus again on people in place and let people park 2 or 3 blocks out if they need to. As long as the downtown is thriving, people want it to be in a real authentic place like Livingston. Yeah.
So in other words, Dan, we currently in our zoning have, a chart that says if you've got this type of a business or usage in this size, you need X number of parking spaces. And that's uniform whether you're in the downtown or out in the suburbs. What you're suggesting is that we don't use those requirements in the downtown and let all the housing and retail use develop there with no requirement, and then there'll be increased demand for parking, and so that creates a market for people to build a parking garage or whatever?
Absolutely. And then there are hundreds of tools related to parking that you can begin to apply. One that I love is set maximum parking allowed versus minimum required. And by doing that, you change the whole formula. There's no developer in the world that wants to build a product of any kind and not provide parking for the market. They just won't do anything that dumb. But a lot of cities now are say if you're going to build some residential in the downtown, they debundle the parking. So you buy an apartment or condo, whatever, and you pay the fair price. And then the real estate agent says, well, now do you want a parking space? And you say, well, of course. Well, okay, that'll be another 25,000. Or do you want two? And we'll get, that'll be 50,000. Whatever. Stop making all of the affordability of living in downtown based on free parking. Yeah, get away from required parking to making it a part of your marketing strategy, debundling the parking. And again, there are hundreds of tools. We could do a whole presentation on just that topic. Yeah, great question, Jim.
Patricia had a comment and a question about housing requirements and apartments in a downtown area. Patricia, do you want to ask your question, or was any of the previous commentary?
Well,
okay,
I'm very fond of Dan Burden. Hi, Dan Burden. This is Patricia Graywell.
Yeah, Patricia.
You're just wonderful. Well, Dan did design on-street parking for downtown Livingston. And at the time we were deciding whether or not we would have bulb outs, and we made the decision for temporary bulb outs. I don't know if you remember that, but we have that. We have your wonderful design. And then we talked further about, okay, we designed the on-street parking. Now let's analyze our parking lots and maximize those. Decide what we do for, right now we have 310 apartments downtown. We have the potential for 240 more apartments if we utilize the second floor of our business buildings. I've done some analysis on this for the last 20 years. I have 13 of those apartments myself. And then bicycling downtown, bicycle lanes in our downtown, so that there's no question about how to safely get through our downtown. So those were those three things: analyzing our parking lots and figuring out parking for housing downtown. We've totally underutilized. Your plan was wonderful in that we utilized B Street, and the city's never moved forward with your plan at all. So I'm thrilled of what's done. We made a decision to keep two-way streets and not have any one-way streets. Thank you so much, Dan. You're just a gem. Now we really would like to take a look at those three items: utilizing our parking lots, planning for downtown housing, and bicycle lanes in our downtown, so that there's safety there. And so I would really like to see if there's a way we could move forward using what you've already done. And then if we need to modify it, great. What would be a timeline on something like that? How could we do this?
Well, obviously that's up to the community, but Jennifer, you were explaining that as a next step to do an update to the downtown master plan. So important. There are dozens of new tools that can be applied to a downtown, and you have so much to protect. And the way you do off-street parking matters as much as what you do with on-street. And there's so many tools that can be done in an off-street parking space. But the most important thing, and I think everyone here sees that, is as you add residential density and additional uses in a downtown, the idea is people park once. They don't drive from one parking space to another. And that if you add residential and you you've got people who are parking, say, overnight on a street. They go off to work in the morning, and as long as you're pricing and handling your parking in a strategic way, good parking spaces turn over every 15 minutes.
Okay.
And not everywhere. Some places you need 2 hours, and some places you need longer. But the point is, you should do a parking management strategy to go along with this. And that probably should be built into your downtown master planning efforts. And Jen, what would you add to that? Jennifer?
Patricia talked about timing, and
Yeah.
if I had a crystal ball, I would say that we could get it, the community could get a downtown plan quicker than the growth policy process that has taken 3 years. So I kind of have high hopes, and we have a little chunk of money to get started, and we'll have to have further discussions as a community after this call.
Yeah, a lot of follow-up topics. I can already see that we're going to have to take a deeper dive in. I am Marshall. I'm going to go back to Becca because we're kind of on that thread of talking about downtown infill, multi-use buildings. Becca, do you want to ask your question directly?
Sure. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really insightful presentation and inspiring as well. So my question was, what are often the barriers to downtown infill and multi-use buildings? I'm interested in your experience with that. And then if anyone on the call can speak to like our barriers specifically, and Dan, you may know about this in Livingston, then how we can advocate and support for that, because it seems like that's so important. And sometimes I wonder why it stalls out, or if it's just older buildings, how tough that is to work with historic buildings to update them. So.
Yeah. Well, the list of challenges to do infill properties in the downtown are just monumental. Again, we built so much of our code in our towns to advance sprawl patterns of cities, and we truly need code specific to a downtown. It doesn't have to apply community-wide. It can start with just downtown, and as you might want to later develop an outer ring, capture more and more. But just using the parking requirement as an example, if you can just get rid of that and allow new buildings just to get beyond that barrier, so that you can take a space that is just begging for a building, what I call the missing tooth in a downtown, and then start to incentivize. We're working in something like 12 communities right now in just one county, Monterey County. And we're looking at every single town of what barriers they've got in their code and how to get beyond them. But we need to do more than that. We need to give incentives for a developer to come and make that investment in a downtown. So what are all the barriers a developer faces, and which ones have to stay in place, but which ones have just been cumbersome and negative in their approach? So it's a big and a complex question, but I hope I'm giving you some of the pathways that we find helpful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jen, did you want to elaborate on any of that, having more recent experience in Livingston?
I don't want to take too much time if other people, I know we have a number of people want to ask questions, so let's get to them first.
Okay, great. I just because this is along the same thread, somebody asked about downtown parking for people who work downtown,
Yeah.
And who don't want to interrupt every 2 hours. Do you have a short answer for that?
Yes. In Port Townsend, where I live, we're a town of 9,000. We have exactly the same issues. It's so important for retail folks to realize that if they work in a shop downtown, that they need to have a good place to park. That's maybe it's even a quarter mile. That's a 5-minute walk and leave the primo places for the people who are going to come and shop and turn over every 15 or 30 minutes. So many towns I work in will designate a place for parking for shop employees and others that need to park longer term. Carmel, California is a really great example of this. They have more remote parking spaces, and they have frequent shuttles to the heart of the downtown. And that works out really well. Not only works out well for the retailers, but a lot of shoppers say, or people coming for a festival, they say, no, I'm going to park more remote and take advantage of these shuttles. And so there's so many other tools that we could apply as opposed to having to move your car every 2 hours because you're consuming one of the spaces that would be better spent for the retail life, of your street. So.
Thank you, Dan. Marshall is works with trees on our tree board. Do you want to ask your question, Marshall?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks for your presentation.
Yep.
Basically, in all your images, because I'm on the tree board, I can't help but notice all the trees. And I'm just curious, kind of within this conversation of, transportation and planning, how kind of you think about the role of trees in landscaping, whether it's kind of integral to the design or whether it's something you just kind of plop in at the end, or how you think about that.
Oh, thanks. This is a question I love the most. I'm definitely an aficionado of trees. I have a degree in forestry from the University of Montana. And urban street trees are just totally essential to the life of a downtown. I work very hard to help green up a street. And obviously you have to deal with many other factors on a main street. But boy, just as an economic principle, when a street has a canopy, a main street, then you can see a 12% or 12 cents on the dollar increase in sales. People want that sense of place. They want that further sense of enclosure and so on. And so trees are essential. If you can't do it for the whole block, then boy, that's another reason why you want curb extensions that can help accent that very special view shed. So many Montana towns have done it well, but many have not. And so I always look at trees first. I really do.
Thanks, Marshall.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. I have Jennifer wrote a comment, but she's jumped off, and she's also helping facilitate the Trails and Active Transportation Plan on examples. And we can answer this later. Maybe I could follow up with you, Dan, around good examples of updating streets and particularly bump outs to maintain historic character. So I don't know if you'd be willing for us to reach out to you on more of those case studies.
Always.
Okay. Thank you. Then I'm going to go also back into the plan. Kristen Galbraith, I think you're still present with us. She works with the county, and she has written the active transportation plan for the county and does a lot of work for grant writing. And so she's asking a question about how the city and county work together. Kristen, do you want to ask your question directly, or else I'm happy to do that for you? I'm going to go ahead unless I hear you pop on, Kristen. So she says, it was similar to Jesse's question, and how the new downtown master plan and city active transportation coalition or active transportation plan coordinate with the Park County AT plan that is currently being updated. So how do these two and other planning documents such as the downtown master plan, how do they speak to one another?
And who's the right person to answer that? Because you guys, there we go, Jennifer.
Yeah,
And
I'll take it as a planner, and I'm going to answer it in a generic fashion. I think all plans need to coordinate, particularly, transportation. But I think that goes for a variety of plans. So Sarah, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but if there are logistical issues between the Park County Active Transportation Plan and the city's plan, as far as people like meeting together, that's something that needs to definitely be worked out, similar to having a city county planning board. That's another important kind of coordination function that needs to happen.
Right. I mean, what I can say is to stress the overimportance of all these plans speaking together. I don't think that there's a risk of redundancy. I think communication and having overlap is something you can maybe, there's no such thing as overperformance in those areas. So hopefully as the Active Transportation Coalition gains more ground, as we can kind of be this conduit between city, county, as they have been in the past, and try to make sure that those relationships and all those documents speak to one another, because someday we're all not going to be here and those plans need to supersede all of us beyond our own visions. So I'm going to keep going with Kristen had another question, and it was more of a comment that the county meets with Montana Department of Transportation once every 3 months. I've myself attended one of these meetings. They discuss all the projects and happenings around infrastructure upgrades, because you have county, city, and state that are all working in this very small area. So she's asking from someone from the group to attend the next meeting, April 28th, and to let her know so we could be put on the agenda, and it'd be a great place to present the Trails and Active Transportation Plan. This is probably a good question for Jennifer, who's actually jumped from the meeting, who's coordinating our plan, and I don't know, maybe others to attend that meeting. I'll definitely be there, and I think more than 1 or 2 people is probably also beneficial to have at those meetings. It is a lot of engineer speak, so having more the non-motorized voice at these conversations would be really beneficial. And then especially the guys that are doing the work on the ground, that those 2 entities really need to speak together. Does anybody have any comments or questions on that suggestion? Kristen, I'll be definitely reaching out to you on how we can participate more authentically in those discussions. I have one question from Jack Luther. Jack, do you want to talk about downtown plans? Ask our question there.
Yeah, I haven't lived in Livingston a long time. I've been there about 15 years, I guess. But in that 15 years, I'm aware of at least 2 or 3 downtown plans that we've had in the past that promoted trees, promoted bump outs, curb extensions, whatever you want to call them. And the city went ahead and in their capital improvements projects have redone Main Street and Calendar Street and 2nd Street a little bit. And none of those plans have ever been followed. And it just it kind of irritates me that here we are talking about another plan and talking about trees and talking about bump outs and all the kinds of things that the people in Livingston and the city especially was against. And it just is, it kind of irks me, I guess. But anyway, thanks for letting me speak.
Yeah. Jack, I'd like to respond in part. One of the problems all communities face is over-planned and under-implemented. So tactical urbanism is pop-up demonstrations and picking a model, what we call a marquee project, let's say for a downtown, do 1 block at first as a pop-up demonstration. And then later, after the consensus, go forward and build it, and then extend it another block and another block. Yeah, too many towns are weak on the implementation side. And I think everyone here realizes we overplan in our country, but we underperform in getting things on the ground. But there's more money and more opportunity that's coming. So we really should be first in the line of that queue to get the funds to show people what it's going to be like. And actually measure it, right? So that we have the outcomes. And so those are things I think will give you more hope. Sorry, Jack, but you're pointing out a truism that's just true throughout the nation. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks,
Herb
Jack. Go ahead, Jen.
Oldershaw has a really good question that I think could be directed at Dan, if Barb's on and wants to ask.
Is it the one about parking?
Yeah.
Oh, I asked that for her. I'm sorry, Jen. She was running around and she sent me a direct message.
Sorry. I may have missed that as I'm scrambling to take notes. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Thank you for keeping another eye. I've had so many personal messages as well as direct messages, or sorry, group messages. And everyone's really appreciative of all the content. And it's been really informative, especially because we have so much to work with in the planning processes that we're all engaged with. So very practical on the downstream side and really helping us be educated in our approach. I don't have any other questions in the chat box, but we do have a few minutes. While someone's thinking of a question, I just want to remind everybody that there is another growth policy meeting with the planning department on the 7th for additional comment. Jen, what are those chapters? It's public infrastructure, utility, and
it's intergovernmental interagency collaboration. Sorry, I put that in the notes too. Just when we were commenting about how does the city and the county interact. Sorry to interrupt you, Jen. Chapter 10 is intergovernmental coordination. Chapter 9 is public facilities. And then chapter 12 is implementation. So it should be those three.
Thank you. Yeah, and so that city-county relationship will come up there. And that was a really great comment coming from Kristen to kind of help inform that, and also some of these sub benefits of these community conversations, because we're all so interconnected in what we're doing. I want to tell you that on the Trails and Active Transportation Plan, we had a couple of the consultant group here, Kathy and Jennifer, but they've left, I think, at the moment. Kathy is still here. But we on the steering committee are helping navigate the different groups, and focus groups will be conducted, some of the online surveys, and some of the intense public participation in April. So with the Active Transportation Coalition, we're representing the non-motorized transportation public. And so you can get in touch with PCEC, with myself directly, social media networks. We'll be doing more of these community conversations. And there's just so many ways that you'll be able to get involved on the ground as well as online, and conceptually, if you like, or taking photos. We need some public profiles of different walkers and bikers to really demonstrate our unique and diverse biking culture and commuter culture. So I will stop there, and I will reach out to people who've registered for this group on different ways to get involved. I think that is it. There's one other project that Erica and I have been embarking on, every single street, walking, biking, running every single street in Livingston, to really inform our comments into the Trails and Active Transportation Plan. So we'll be sending some more information around that, and maybe it'll be another presentation or community conversation we can have. Is there anything else, or can I close off at 1 o'clock? And
I just want to thank everyone for this opportunity. I just think you guys are amazing holding these sessions, and you give me lots of hope. But I've got to leave now for another call. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks very much. You give us a lot of hope.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.